Well, I'm not one to push supplements on anybody, but I wanted to let you know that here's something I plan to try. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for 38 and a half years. And I've tried many things over time to see if I can keep my quality of life as high as it possibly can be for as long as possible. And part of that is nutrition, making sure that I get the right food and even sometimes the right supplements if I don't know that my food is sufficient to give me the nutrients that I need. And so the one that I've been looking at with great interest lately is something called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, because according to clinical trials, it has demonstrated effectiveness not just for the general population, but specifically for the older population and for those with MS. And as you know, there's some biological similarity between aging and multiple sclerosis. Why don't we spend a little time looking at what the literature has to say about this supplement? So here's the article I originally saw. Natural molecule NAC may help improve MS brain function, study reports in Multiple Sclerosis Today. And it was published in March of 2020. The article is written by Patricia Ignacio. It says treatment for 2 months with N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, a natural molecule that enhances the levels of antioxidants, significantly improved metabolic activity in certain brain regions among people with multiple sclerosis, a small clinical study reports. The increase in metabolic activity was accompanied by improvements in the patient's cognitive function and attention. This is an exciting study that suggests a natural molecule such as NAC may help improve brain metabolism and symptoms in patients with multiple sclerosis. Andrew Newberg, MD, a professor at Thomas Jefferson University, a neuroimaging expert, and the study's lead author, said in a press release. The study, N-acetylcysteine administration, is associated with increased cerebral glucose metabolism in patients with multiple sclerosis. An exploratory study was published in the journal Frontiers in Neurology. We'll be looking quickly at that in a moment, but let's continue on with this article, which is written more for people like us to read. I think that you don't necessarily have to be a scientist to understand it, but this gives you the gist. In MS, an autoimmune reaction directed against myelin, the protective protein coat around nerve fibers, leads to inflammatory process that creates lesions and severely damages patients' neurons or nerve cells. Yet available therapies focus on preventing the occurrence of more lesions instead of restoring the effective nerve cells. Yes, that is a problem. That's why we always talk about remyelination as kind of the holy grail. And it seems like that's years away. But they go on to say oxidative stress, an imbalance between the body's production of potentially harmful reactive oxygen species and its ability to contain them, is a known driver of neurological damage caused by a self-reactive or self-attacking immune system. Thus, tackling the oxidative imbalance is a promising strategy to help reduce the impairments in neurological function. NAC is a natural molecule that increases the levels of glutathione in the body and the brain. Glutathione is an antioxidant found in neurons that protects these cells against oxidative damage. A common over-the-counter oral supplement, NAC is also available as an injectable medication. In its injection form, NAC is used to prevent liver injury induced by oxidative stress after an overdose with the pain reliever acetaminophen, sold as Actamin and Tylenol, among other brand names. Mouse studies have shown that receiving NAC increases the levels of glutathione in the brain. Not sure whether that means that we haven't done human studies on it yet, but the mouse studies are promising. In a previous study, researchers from Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia evaluated the benefits of providing NAC to people with Parkinson's disease, a condition also marked by oxidative stress and neurodegenerative damage. Participants in that study, who were treated with a combination of both oral and intravenous, or other words, into the vein, NAC, had a boost in the dopamine function in the basal ganglia, a brain region often affected in Parkinson's. Dopamine, whose loss is a hallmark of the disease, is a chemical messenger that allows nerve cells to communicate and, among other functions, helps regulate movement. And that's always something that people with MS would like to be better at as well. I can see where there might be some crossover benefit. In the new study, the researchers evaluated whether NAC had therapeutic benefits in MS as well. While there are several human studies that have evaluated antioxidants in MS patients, none have explored the use of NAC, the team said. The clinical trial, and there's the clinical trial number, so you can go look that up, enrolled 24 MS patients, including 18 with relapsing remitting MS and 6 with primary progressive MS. The participants were randomly divided into 2 groups. The 12 people in the control group, 10 women and 2 men, mean age 53.9, were given only the standard of care treatment. Meanwhile, the other 12, 10 women and 2 men, mean age 51.5, were given NAC plus the standard of care treatment. NAC was given daily by IV once a week and orally in the remaining 6 days. The participants in both groups were evaluated at the trial's start, baseline, and after 2 months of treatment. Evaluations with fluorodeoxyglucose, or FDG, positron emission tomography, or PET imaging, a technique to measure glucose or sugar metabolism in neurons, were done at baseline and at the end of 2 months. The participants also completed clinical and symptom questionnaires at the start of the trial and 2 months later. These included the mental health inventory and the perceived deficits questionnaire attention. Following the initial 2-month period, the participants in the study's standard of care arm were eligible for treatment with NAC. Okay, so even the placebo group got to have some NAC, it looks like. The results of the PET imaging showed that patients given NAC for 2 months had a significant increase in glucose activity, suggesting improvements in brain metabolism in several regions of the brain compared with those given standard of care. The participants in the NAC group also showed significant improvements in the 2 questionnaires, with better MHI cognition and PDQ attention scores. That meant their cognitive function and ability to focus had also improved. The current study using FDG-PET imaging suggests that NAC might positively impact cerebral glucose metabolism in MS patients, and this appears to be associated with improved symptoms related to cognition and attention, researchers said. In the future, larger and placebo-controlled studies will help better define the clinical benefits of NAC treatment during MS progression, the team noted. Yes, and you might have noticed the number of participants in this study was quite small, so it's hard to conclude that you've seen an effect because it's hard to have statistically significant results with such a small sample. So their next step is to enroll a larger number of folks. Such studies will also determine the best dosage and treatment regimen, they said. This study is an important step in understanding how NAC might work as a potentially new avenue for managing multiple sclerosis patients, said Daniel Monti, MD, director of the Marcus Institute of Integrative Health at Thomas Jefferson University and the study's first author. The NAC appears to enable neurons to recover some of their metabolic function, Monti concluded. Well, that is actually very interesting. let's take a quick look at the actual article that this was from. And here it is. It's published in Frontiers in February of 2020. N-acetylcysteine administration is associated with increased cerebral glucose metabolism in patients with multiple sclerosis, an exploratory study. Now, we've already gone through the article about this clinical trial, so we will not go into detail here, since, again, this is going to be written more for scientists, and it would be a little bit more technical than we probably want to get into, because I'd probably have to define and explain just about every term here. But if we scroll down to the conclusions, which is the important part, the results of this study suggest that NAC positively affects cerebral glucose metabolism in MS patients, which is associated with qualitative patient-reported improvements in cognition and attention. That's actually really good news. Larger scale studies may help to determine the clinical impact of NAC on measures of functioning over the course of illness, as well as the most effective dosage and dosage regimen. Well, though I couldn't find anything further in clinicaltrials.gov about NAC supplementation in multiple sclerosis, what I'm finding is the actual research seems to be focused on longevity, on aging, in using not only NAC, but also glycine together. As you can see here in this paper that was published in March of 2021, it's called Glycine and N-acetylcysteine, or GlyNAC supplementation in older adults improves glutathione deficiency, oxidative stress, mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, insulin resistance, endothelial dysfunction, genotoxicity, muscle strength, and cognition. Results of a pilot clinical trial. Now, as I named off those different areas of improvement, I think many of those are ones that we with MS would be very happy to see improvement in as well. And as I have said in another video, which I'll link, many people consider MS to be a form of accelerated aging. And so I have always been keen to follow research in aging to see what they're looking at and whether any of that could apply to us. And so we've already seen that research has been done on NAC supplementation as a way of improving MS. Looking at these two supplements in tandem to improve aging might, by the way, help us with our MS. And so, again, I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but the abstract says that oxidative stress and mitochondrial dysfunction are implicated as causative factors for aging. Older adults have an increased prevalence of elevated oxidative stress, impaired mitochondrial fuel oxidation, elevated inflammation, endothelial dysfunction, insulin resistance, cognitive decline, muscle weakness, and sarcopenia, but contributing mechanisms are unknown and interventions are limited or lacking. We previously reported that inducing deficiency of the antioxidant tripeptide glutathione in young mice results in mitochondrial dysfunction, and that supplementing GlyNAC, which is a combination of glycine and N-acetylcysteine, or NAC, in aged mice improves naturally occurring glutathione deficiency, mitochondrial impairment, oxidative stress, and insulin resistance. This pilot trial in older adults was conducted to test the effect of GlyNAC supplementation and withdrawal on intracellular glutathione concentrations, oxidative stress, mitochondrial fuel oxidation, inflammation, endothelial function, genotoxicity, muscle and glucose metabolism, body composition, stress, strength, and cognition. So skipping down, though, to the conclusion, which is, I guess, the part that we most care about right now, GlyNAC supplementation for 24 weeks in older adults was well tolerated and lowered oxidative stress, corrected intracellular glutathione deficiency and mitochondrial dysfunction, decreased inflammation, insulin resistance, and endothelial dysfunction, and genomic damage, and improves strength, gait, speed, cognition, and body composition. Supplementing GlyNAC in aging humans could be a simple and viable method to promote health and warrants additional investigation. So that's where things stand with that. And, I decided that it wasn't going to do me any harm at all to start taking those two supplements because they're not very expensive, and they said that there's really no adverse effects. They're either going to do nothing or they're going to help. So why not? Give them a try. I have started taking them. It's only been a few days since I've been on the combination. I was taking NAC for quite a while, but I think I'll start with this combination and see where it goes. I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm probably also considered an older adult by now, so I have 2 reasons to want to know whether this is going to be effective at all. So I'll do my own at-home clinical trial, and if anything really exciting happens, I'll be sure to let you know. But in the worst case, it can't be doing any harm. As you can see, a lot of these factors are things that are going to happen below the surface. You're not necessarily going to see a difference. Would you really be able to tell if you had a glutathione deficiency, or if you had mitochondrial dysfunction, or even inflammation? I mean, how would you actually know that unless it was really bad? You wouldn't blame any of those for the problems you were having. So I'm thinking it's probably just an interesting sort of insurance policy. But maybe you don't want to take more supplements, and I wouldn't blame you for that. So I found an article in Heathline about 10 natural ways to increase your glutathione levels. Your body produces the glutathione it needs, but sometimes your levels may run low, and I think that's true especially if you're either older or if you have a chronic illness like multiple sclerosis. You can consume glutathione naturally from foods like kale or garlic, and here are 10 different ways to boost your glutathione levels. So let's just scroll down, though, to the different suggestions that they have here. Number 1, consume sulfur-rich foods. Sulfur is found in 2 amino acids in food, methionine and cysteine. It's primarily derived from dietary proteins such as beef, fish, and poultry. So if you eat those, you probably are already getting quite a bit of the glutathione that you need. It says, however, though, that there are vegetarian sources of sulfur as well, such as cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kale, watercress, and mustard greens. So that's one suggestion. Another is to increase your vitamin C intake, which is always a good idea anyway. And we basically know where vitamin C comes from. Strawberries, citrus fruits, papaya, kiwi, bell peppers, all are examples of foods high in vitamin C. Vitamin C as a supplement is really inexpensive. I would recommend that you get good quality vitamin C if you do that, however. And perhaps vitamin C is better to get from food than to take supplements. Next up, add selenium-rich foods to your diet. They call this a glutathione cofactor, meaning it's a substance needed for glutathione activity. So you can't really use the glutathione that you produce unless you have selenium to help make it work. Some of the best sources of selenium are beef, chicken, fish, organ meats, cottage cheese, brown rice, and Brazil nuts. So there's suggestions there. Whether or not you eat a vegan diet, there are things that you can be eating that would help increase your selenium. Number 4, eat foods naturally rich in glutathione. So go right to the source and eat foods that have glutathione in them. It says that the body produces glutathione, but there are also dietary sources, and here they are. Spinach, avocados, asparagus, and okra are some of the richest dietary sources. However, dietary glutathione is poorly absorbed by the human body. Additionally, cooking and storage conditions can decrease the amount of glutathione found in food. So they're saying further research is warranted to fully understand the effect of glutathione-rich foods on oxidative stress and glutathione levels. And I have seen articles that talk about where it's better to get your glutathione from the building blocks of NAC and glycine rather than to try and eat glutathione directly or even take glutathione supplements, because the body has to carefully balance between NAC and glycine to make the right amount of glutathione, and if you supplement with glutathione, you may be messing up that balance. I don't know if that's actually really true, but it sounds kind of plausible, given that our bodies are pretty delicate and they do get out of balance. That makes some sense to me. But anyway, that's just that piece of information. The next one they have is supplement with whey protein. And I think that since lots of folks are doing protein powders these days, might be pretty easy to get that into your diet without making any big change. It says that your body's production of glutathione depends on certain amino acids. An amino acid called cysteine is particularly important, and it's involved in glutathione synthesis, and again, that's part of the name, NAC, right? Foods rich in cysteine, such as whey protein, may increase your glutathione supply. In fact, research strongly supports this claim, as many studies have found that whey protein may increase levels of glutathione and therefore reduce oxidative stress. So those are the suggestions that are given in this article for increasing your glutathione levels naturally without taking any supplements. As you can see, there are some caveats and some things to be aware of here. I'll link the article below, and you can check it out for yourself. And also look into this a little bit more in your own way, and maybe even discuss this with your nutritionist or your doctor, because that might give you some good insights into whether you need to be supplementing at all. Well, I don't know if I've given you all the information that you need to make a decision about this, and I don't even know that you need to decide about it. I'm just out here to keep you informed of things. Lots is going on, and you'd always like to keep up with stuff, because sometimes what happens in one study affects what happens in consequent studies, and sooner or later they add up to something that we need to be paying attention to. So I'm just doing my part to keep you up to date. But that's all I have for you today, and whether you decide that you're going to get your glutathione from diet or take a supplement, I only ask that you take good care of yourself. And I'll see you again in my next video.